farmers will plant forest trees between their crops to climate-proof the farms and help sequester carbon emissions. Good practices in climate adaptation will be taught to the farmers so they will fully understand and appreciate the pioneering environmental effort. Dr. Lasco hopes that after the success of the Albay experiment, the program can be adopted by small farmers across the country who have been identified as most vulnerable to climate-related hazards. 3 carbon sequestration projects covering a total of 5,000 hectares will also be carried out in ideal sites in the country's 3 major regions, in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The projects, which will benefit some 7,500 small farmers, have been programmed to capture 102,400 tons carbon dioxide equivalent per year, with a total value of over $500,000 US. In the areas to be reforested by the carbon sequestration projects, the rehabilitation of precious watershed areas is also expected. Dr. Lasco and a colleague from UP Los Baños, Dr. Florencia Pulhin, are the program proponents. I am an enthusiastic supporter of the carbon sequestration project. I am also helping develop a new template for a greening Philippine highways and roadways, another effort to mitigate the hazards of climate change. A forest garden will be developed along the Star Tollway in Tanawan City, which hopefully will be the first of several efforts to improve the landscape design of our major road networks and highways. The ecological, economic, and educational gains of the community from such a basic initiative will be enormous, and this is being initiated by UP Los Baños College of Environmental Sciences. Luntiang Pilipinas, which started more than 10 years ago, is building a national nursery also at Los Baños in Laguna, in partnership with the Bureau of Plant Industry. Antique and Iloilo will also be pilot projects which will benefit from this project. The infrastructure of any tree planting program starts with the availability of materials to plant. Propagation of indigenous planting materials, including our precious dipterocarbs, fruit trees, even our native vegetables, and medicinal plants, is now being intensified by Luntiang Pilipinas. From these materials, we shall restore our tropical forests, urban tree parks will sprout like oases in our cities, and communities will have fresh, nutritious food. This is nothing new, however. Haribon has successfully collaborated with Antique, Bukidnon, and Sablayan communities in rainforestation farming. Indigenous trees and fruit trees and some croplands were planted to restore deforested areas. Doctors Milan and Margraf, in a 1994 study at Leyte State University, concluded that a farming system in the humid tropics is increasingly more sustainable the closer it is in its species composition to the original local rainforest. More recently, a biodiversity research center was set up in Bilar, Bohol by the Soil and Water Conservation Foundation. It demonstrates various terrestrial environments and applications for reforestation of natural forests and farming lands. The center boasts of an indigenous tree nursery, a dipterocarp hedge garden, a rainforestation area, a karst education trail, and a training center. With the Raha Sikatuna protected landscape, the caves, and the river nearby, the center will also promote ecotours for additional income for the communities. Funds for these projects were authorized by the U.S. Tropical Forest Conservation Act of 1998. That law allows debt relief for developing countries like the Philippines if the funds will be used to aid local forest conservation activities. It was with particular attention that I watched how the scheme is being adapted to Philippine needs and conditions, because during the state visit, along with the minority leader then, in 2001 in Washington, we spoke with U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell about how we might benefit from this Tropical Conservation Act. The Philippine Tropical Forest Conservation Foundation now administers this fund. In selected areas of Cebu, the Million Mangroves Project, which PTFCF also supports, is ongoing. It aims to protect the communities from climate impacts and to rejuvenate the fishing industry. Now closer to this chamber along the bay, dynamite and other forms of illegal fishing and water pollution killed a thriving fishing industry of the coastal barangays of Rosario in Cavite. Today, the local organization of fisherfolks, the Rosario Multipurpose and Development Cooperative, and their partners are engaged in a novel experiment to revive the fish habitat. Reef structures are made out of organic material through a simple technology taught to them by the HWK Foundation. the structures are dropped into the reef forestation area in Manila Bay. The fishermen visited us 2 weeks ago with the good news, and the good news is the fish have finally come back. They watched their underwater garden and the hundreds of fish that have returned using a robot made by local students. The mayor of Rosario has formally adopted the project, and soon the fishing grounds will be revived. There will be no need for small boats to go out to sea just to catch fish. Rosario is showing the way, albeit unintentionally, for coastal areas threatened by coral reef bleaching due to climate change. At the level of legislation, Mr. President, I am now asking my colleagues to help me secure the speedy passage of a pending measure which seeks the creation of a climate change commission. This measure is as vital as bills on anti-poverty, economic reconstruction, and national security. The proposed Climate Change Commission will elevate climate change issues and their attendant hazards and risks into the top rank of government priority. The ground-level work for climate proofing and carbon sequestration and the parallel environmental initiatives at the Senate may not get screaming headlines and the attention of the pundits, but they represent sincere and viable antidotes to the greatest scourge of our generation. They are big, determined steps for the survival of humankind. There are firm plans to host an Asia-Pacific Conference on Climate Change Adaptation in Manila late this year, with this representation as co-convener. The province of Albay, the first LGU in Southeast Asia to champion climate change adaptation, will convene the conference in coordination with the UNESCO. With a local theme, local governments take the lead. The conference aims to harness the immense resources of local governments and their partners by forging a network and cooperation framework in preparation for the 14th Conference of the Parties in December. On this season that we celebrate World Environment Day, the minutes and the hours on the global environment clock are all ticking to sunset. Let us all work to reverse this and to usher in the morning in our planet. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Biason, Senator Jambi, Senator Janet.
Houses national security, but also the security of our environment, which is a component of the security of the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, 7 bills on disaster management had been referred to the Committee on National Defense and Security. And your committee chairman, Mr. President, had already conducted 2 hearings. And in those 2 hearings, the scientists in this country were invited. Pag-asa, PVOLCS, and even the Manila Observatory were invited. And also some scientists from our University of the Philippines were invited. The reason that this representation as chairman of your committee, Mr. President, invited them was so that we will be able to focus on the first R of the 4 R's in disaster management. For so long, we had been focusing on the 3 last R's: rescue, relief, and rehabilitation. I would like to focus more on the first R, which is readiness. Meaning, I would like to propose initial warning raised by Pag-asa was typhoon signal number 1. Until in the late afternoon of that day, that typhoon developed into typhoon signal number 3. And so everyone was caught flat-footed and unaware, not ready. Now, Mr. President, Your Honor, climate change there are 2 components insofar as changing the climate is concerned. The first one is climate change as referred to by scientists all over the world. Climate change means the changing in the climate because of man's activities. Variable climate is referred to as change in climate caused by natural, like the tilting of the axis of the Earth as it rotates around the sun, etc., etc. So let us now focus on climate change, meaning changes in the climate because of man's activity. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, Your Honor, this representation attended